Hello and welcome to Story Radio, the podcast for readers, writers and lovers of short stories everywhere. Today, Martin Nathan is talking to Amanda Owen, the Yorkshire Shepherdess, about her new book, Celebrating the Seasons with the Yorkshire Shepherdess, published by Macmillan.
So today I'm talking to Amanda Owen, whose accounts of her life as a shepherdess in the Yorkshire Dales have been very successful. As well as being a best-selling author, she features in a TV series, Our Yorkshire Farm, on Channel 5. Her fourth book, Celebrating the Seasons, has just been published. Amanda, thank you for talking to Story Radio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your writing in Celebrating the Seasons evokes the Swaledale landscape, and you also share your photographs, which I really like, and your recipes, which I haven't tried yet. And I've often found life writing to be quite indulgent, but I really like the kind of down-to-earth pace of your writing. It's a very different mood I felt in this book compared to your first book, The Yorkshire Shepherdess, where you kind of rushed through lots of life events and used up a lot of material in that book, didn't you?
Well, yes. I mean, thank you. I sort of over the years, I guess your writing style evolves. You get to know yourself a bit more. I suppose you've maybe, in a way, through the books, kind of seen me grow, seen me learn a bit. Because I would never, I never dreamt of being a writer. In fact, indeed, the very thought of anyone calling me an author sort of sent a shiver down my spine, because I was always a reader, never a writer. But it was just literally about being given an opportunity to tell my story. And I had to set off somewhere. 80,000 words was what was wanted, and I gave them 120. And it all began there.
Right, so you did have a commission, did you, when you started?
I did. I think there would have been no feasible way on earth that I would ever have written a book if it had just have been a project whereby I could have sort of fitted it in with everything else that was going on. I literally needed a deadline. I needed somebody cracking the whip and somebody saying, I need your manuscript and I need it next week, because that was what pushed me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how do you actually do it? Do you set aside some time every day to work?
Quite honestly, there is nothing orderly whatsoever about anything that I do, and it would be impossible for me to work in that manner. I tend to write in the middle of the night. I tend to write when everybody's gone to sleep, because my brain is whirring. There is so much stuff going on in my head, literally the here and now, what's going on the farm, people, things, children, family, everything. It's all in there. And the only time that I can kind of focus and sort of set off to write is when everything's gone quiet. So I found over the years that my way of working is not particularly to set aside a certain amount of time, not to say, well, I'm going to write for an hour or I'm going to write for 2 hours. It's literally for me to give it a go and see whether I'm in the right frame of mind. If I'm in the right frame of mind, 20 minutes of feeling it and sort of enjoying myself and really sort of going along for the ride is far more worthwhile than 3 hours of sitting there trying to force it. Now the problem is, of course, that can become an issue as deadlines loom. But I've discovered that the pressure of a deadline almost forces it, and then there's no time to change anything, there's no time to go back in to edit, there's no time for me to make any alteration. That's what you gain.
Right.
And that works for me. For some people, that might be an absolute nightmare. But I know from talking to my daughter, when she's been doing her university work and doing her dissertation, she will write what she needs to write away beforehand and then go in and make little changes and sort of prettify things, and that would be deadly for me, because I still would not send that manuscript in until probably 20 minutes before it becomes overdue, because I'd still be tweaking it, I'd still be changing it, I'd still be thinking that I could improve upon it, and I take away that by leaving it to the last minute.
Right. So when you write, is it mainly writing about the events of the day, or is it...
No, never. It's always looking retrospectively. I haven't got a diary. I haven't got time to keep a diary, not surprisingly. But what I have got is a very large back catalogue of photographs. So my photo library is enormous. I think it's about 130,000 pictures in there. I take lots of pictures every single day, whatever is going on, and that can be anything from the sort of sublime to the ridiculous, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. It's all there. That is what reminds me. So, I also sometimes occasionally do use voice notes on my phone. I live in a place where there's no signal, so no one can ever ring me up. So it's not a distraction. I can have my phone in my pocket. And if I think of a certain turn of phrase or something that I want to sort of remember later, I can use it, and I can literally say it into my phone and record that thought. That's it. Do I sound completely mad?
No.
I don't know. You don't talk. Writers don't talk to other writers. I don't think. Do writers talk to other writers?
Yeah.
Do they? We see, I don't. Maybe that's because I don't feel like I am one.
Yeah, that may be it. I think there's a lot of people in writing groups, and I think it has its problems, because I think because you kind of get, say, 5 people reading a piece, they'll give you 5 different comments, and then you're kind of trying to kind of keep them all happy, and it can be a bit of a nightmare. So, yeah. And I'm a terrible rewriter. I spend all my life rewriting stuff.
I know, it's just, I just kind of never... I'm a shepherd. That's what I am.
Yeah.
I'm not a writer. How weird is that? Is that unusual or not? I don't know. I am what I am in the book, and of course I write about it, and it was really incredibly important that those books were my words.
But I've noticed in this book, I think there's a kind of new level of descriptive writing that you're developing in terms of particular landscape. I think like in November you said, under the heavy iron skies, the purple-hued moorland vista bathed in soft autumnal light, which I think is really kind of powerful and has a lot of kind of tension in it. And then there's your writing about the sphagnum moss, which is again really effective, and but it doesn't kind of draw attention to itself. I think that's kind of something really very powerful.
That's very kind of you to say such things for someone who knows. You have to remember, I was always a reader, and I loved where books could take me. Anything that I could visualise, anything that I felt like I could belong there, that I could close my eyes and I could be there, was just wonderful. And I'm not talking anything highbrow. I'm literally talking about the Heriots. I loved the Heriots because I had enough of a concept of the places that he was talking about, that they already existed, but that there was like another level on top that I could read about. And that's kind of where I wanted to take people who are reading the books. Obviously, I take photographs, and obviously there is the old adage of a photograph can sometimes convey 1,000 words. And sometimes...
I don't remember kind of any visual imagery like that in James Herriot.
No, he wasn't. He was a little bit more. I suppose he was a little more sort of stoic in his description. I don't know. I just know what I like, and I like things to be descriptive. But I don't want it to go too far until you almost. Oh man, I've got like attention span. That will only take me to a certain level before I drop out. It still had to remain what it was. It had to be something that was readable. It had to be something, children talk to me about how they've read that in their school, and I love that. but equally adults and men and women have read it and enjoyed it. And that, at the end of the day, was all that it was about. I could never have envisaged that somebody who got an E in English at GCSE could ever have done that. And that is the only thing that I'd want anyone to take away from reading the books, is that they say there's a book in everyone, and if you can find that spark, that thing you want to write about, and then you've got to pick up your pen, you've got to do it.
So you've not been consciously kind of reading other authors and trying to kind of develop that stuff.
I've stopped.
Right.
Do you know that is the most terrible thing about writing. I daren't. I don't know if that's something that's common or not, but I've got so many books. I've got books that literally range from sort of like epic, ancient, sort of dusty tomes about animals and agriculture, really heavyweight stuff, to almost frivolous things. But I daren't read like I used to, because I'm scared that subconsciously I'm going to pick up something and it's going to sort of sit in my mind, and I'm going to, in a way, feel that it's mine when it's not.
Yeah.
Does that happen to other people?
That you're going to copy their style too much, yeah.
I'm not talking about plagiarism. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the fact that I can read something factual. Don't get me wrong. I can read my Black's Veterinary Dictionary for sheep owners. I'm fine with that. I can read but I can't read. I would be. It sounds awful, but I would be very, very nervous now to pick up a Harriet and read it again. I hope the time will come when I can do that, because they've given me so much enjoyment and in a way set me off on this path. But I've almost had to put that aside because I'm just worried about what I might absorb and read and unwittingly trying to emulate. And I don't want to do that. I want to be my own person.
Yeah. I was wondering about that because I think his accounts are much more fictionalised. So I wondered where you were heading now, when you were kind of thinking about perhaps a more fictional part.
Do you know, I have thought about that, but I don't know whether I'd be any good at it. I suppose you can only sort of answer that one by actually sort of making an attempt, but everything that I write about, I can see in my mind. And if you've got that, even if you want to sort of, I don't know, manipulate it a bit and sort of maybe disguise somebody or change something slightly, if you have that picture in your mind, then you can get there. Could I pluck people and places and things out of nowhere? I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe if I found the focus, maybe if I found the elements that I needed to be within what I wanted to write about, maybe I could work that way. Who knows?
Yeah. So I wondered, because reading your first book, The Yorkshire Shepherdess, there's a lot of quite dark events in the early stages of that, and I kind of thought that kind of loneliness and that kind of quite scary stuff must have been kind of quite key to kind of making you the person you are today. And I wondered whether you ever thought about going and exploring those parts a little bit more.
It's so funny because I've just done an interview actually across at the radio station, and they talked a lot about that point in my life, and I don't know, it was quite emotional, I suppose, going back. When I set off to write, I don't think anybody ever thinks, oh my goodness, I am so interesting. Like you said, memoir, it can be a bit self-indulgent, and I never wanted it to be that. I guess if someone was going to describe me, they might describe me in many ways, but I would hope that they would say, what you see is what you get, down to earth, back to basics. That is me. I wrote exactly where I'd come from, the life events, and what brought me to where I am today. And I never could have dreamed that there would be so much there. I thought I was going to struggle with my word count. How wrong was I? It was absolutely the other way. So I guess there is room. I feel like there is room to go back and maybe explore certain elements of the stories that I began with. And you know, the human mind's a funny thing, isn't it? How literally an interview like earlier can bring back certain memories and make you think of certain sort of scenarios that you found yourself in. And yeah, I do sometimes catch myself sort of thinking that maybe I need to go down a different avenue.
Because I don't know, it kind of feels like you were always destined to become what you are, but I'm sure kind of in those times you were kind of like...
That means a lot for you
at
to
all.
say that though, because at the time you don't think that, do you? You
No.
know, you're flailing. You're sort of feeling your way to where you think you're heading. But as we know, life throws you a few funny old curveballs, and I suppose it all sort of boils back down to the question of, yes, I had a master plan, but it wasn't really a master plan. It was a set of ideas. It was a dream. It sounds a bit cheesy, that, but I had a goal. I knew where I wanted to be. How many people actually managed to get to the place that they wanted to be? And that's what I wanted to put onto paper for people. I wanted this book not to be just about would-be shepherds. I didn't want this book to be just literally sort of like a how to do this kind of guide. It had to be more loose than that. It had to be saying, look, you know, this is my story, this is where I came from, here I am. In a way, the book in itself is sort of saying, this is the achievement. Maybe the book is the achievement rather than the title, The Shepherdess. You see? That's what I did, coming from where I did, with not a jot of writing experience. That's what you can do. That is what is achievable. I am absolute proof that you can have a book at number 2 in the bestsellers and get an E in English at GCSE. And I want people to like say, you know what, I can do that. I'm not unique. I was given an opportunity. To do some art. And I have learned so much along the way. And, you know, I want other people to give that a go.
So you never thought about writing until someone asked you to?
No, I was a reader. It never even occurred to me. I mean, it wasn't particularly like, when would you have time? It wasn't that. It was that, you know, you're all just doing your thing, living your life, and it was just where I'd been and what I'd done. I didn't think it had held that much interest, should we say.
So when they asked you, did you just kind of get on with it and that was it? You handed it over and...
Oh my God, it was so hard. The actual process of writing, that was something else. I mean, it's one thing to go into a boardroom and sit there and say, yes, I want to write you a book, half-heartedly, albeit because I wasn't right sure that I did. But I'd say this is all me sort of thinking, you know, I suppose the drive, the impetus was all about challenging myself. Could I do this? I was given an opportunity. I should take it. So many people get opportunities and always wonder what would happen, what if? So I'm sitting at the board table. I went to, I think it was 4 big publishing houses. I had a piece of paper, just like this A4 piece of paper. It said, who are you, Amanda Owen? What do you do? I'm a shepherd. What do you want to write about? My life and journey to being a shepherd. Who inspired you? James Herriot. Who is going to read this? And I put, I don't know. And then underneath it was like, media credentials. And I put, 962 Twitter followers. I was very proud of that fact. And what else did I put? I think I maybe must have referenced the fact that I'd been on the Dales television programme, which was a reality programme that's very, very much in the genre of sort of slow television, beautiful views, following a few different families around the Dales. That was it. And I mean, the process was completely... I didn't understand it, literally. It was something that was happening almost somewhere else. So the point comes a week later when literally the agent, who I met once before I came down to London, said, okay, well, you have choices here, you have options. These are the deals that are on the table. And I said, what about this one? Because it was Macmillan, and the one thing that stuck in my mind is that when I went into the offices of Macmillan, they had displays of books. And they had James Herriot. And they said, look, we want to do a hardback and a paperback, and we are looking for somebody, and I'm not going to say I'm not even going to compare myself with James Herriot, so I'm not doing that, but they were looking for something of a similar ilk. And I said, right, I want to go with Macmillan, purely on that. Let's go with Macmillan, because they published the Herriots. It goes hardback, paperback, so that's almost 2 bites of the cherry. I want that deal. And it was like, right, okay, so now you need to produce 80,000 words. I can't remember the exact time scale, whether I had 6 months. It wasn't so long. I wasn't sure if it's 6 months or whether it was 9 months. But literally just making a start on that, it's kind of like, I suppose, it's just taking a step into the unknown, because I physically didn't know how I was going to do it. I had an iPad. This is back in the days of the iPad 1 or whatever it was. I had an iPad. And I began writing. And I didn't even know really where I was stopping or starting, because there wasn't really a start or an end point. I was just set off writing. And I wasn't even convinced that I could give them the 80,000 words that they needed. So obviously I did. I gave them far more, which was a dream for them because they can edit it down. But that was sort of the start of a huge learning curve, learning how I worked, learning all the things that I know now, all my failings. Oh God, my eyes, they put loads of makeup on me. I feel like my eyes are running, sorry.
So did you have to do a lot of rework or?
In that first one, I discovered that I wasn't easily pleased. I discovered, there was various conversations that needed to be had. For instance, am I writing as people speak? You might as well set a precedent for how you're going to go along, because you needn't write one way and have to start again. So it was, and for me it was always the importance of voice, of being able to hear the actual conversation. At that point, you see, although we had done a little bit of television on the Dales, people wouldn't have been familiar with my dulcet tones. Thank God I did write in that style. People said to me later that they felt like I was actually talking, that I was speaking, that they could hear me. And,
It's quite hard, that notating how people speak, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
In a dialect like that.
Yes, but also it's very helpful when it comes to actually sort of your recollection of it, because all of a sudden you can hear the person speaking, you can hear that conversation, then you've kind of got it. The minute you sort of start trying to tidy it up and sort of, I don't know, make it neat, then you lose something. You certainly lose the impetus anyway. So I set off writing, and I think in that first draft, I would say there was been 120,000. Then there was obviously a huge edit, and it was discovered that maybe, just maybe, I'd kind of gone too far with what I'd been telling them, and they needed to create a cut-off point So there was kind of a lot of material that remained that, as it happened, became the second book.
Right.
Because that stood me in a little bit better position when it came to bargaining.
Yeah.
Because it was a 2-book deal. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Originally I was going to write 2 books for Macmillan. But my lack of confidence meant that I told my agent I was going to give him 1. I'd take half the money, which was literally, it wasn't life-changing stuff. It was just, it was a nice little payment, but not groundbreaking.
So as you wrote, did you have anyone that you shared your writing with?
Actually, that's a good question. I would read back to Clive. It was very useful to have someone to bounce my ideas off, and also to help remind me of aspects of whatever I was talking about that I hadn't maybe thought of, that I hadn't considered. Because quite often he was party to what was going on. Not the early stuff, but particularly later. He would say, "Oh, do you remember? Do you remember?" And when it came to actual throwing in the factual bits, that was really useful. I would always, if there was something that I'd written about that I was particularly sort of joyful about and particularly sort of pleased with, I'd read it back to him over breakfast, and he would always give me his opinion, whether I wanted it or not.
And a lot of people won't share things with their spouses because it's like quite a fraught relationship.
Well, exactly. But I mean, it's it depends. I just can't. All the time, I think when you're in the midst of writing something, even when you have a deadline, even when you've got so much going on, you kind of almost can't come out of it. It's just there. You have it to do, you have it to do, and all the time you're thinking, certain things will pop into your head at the most stupid of moment. You can be in the car, you can be at the fell, you can be literally, and you're just something, and you'll be like, oh my, got to. And that's why I started with the phone, because I quickly realised that anything that I thought I could hold in my mind would just evaporate when I was faced with the 1,000 different distractions that were always coming at me.
Yeah, phones are very handy, I think.
They are very handy. That it's great because no one can actually ring me, so I don't actually get disturbed. But yes. So yeah, I've sat in the car. I used to drive to the car park. I call it the car park. It's not really a car park. It's down where we put the hay bales. You can go to the top of the cattle grid, turn right, and go down this like a shooting track. And there's a place where we'll put a round bale feeder so the sheep would come. And I sometimes used to go there. Used to go and park there. If I was in the right mood and I was going to write, it didn't matter. It could be in dark. It could be at dark. I mean, most of the time it was in the night. But if for various reasons I'd thought of something and I particularly felt like I wanted to write, then I could go there. Sometimes I even remember actually sitting on the staircase. There's a big stone staircase in the middle of the farmhouse. It goes up and around, sort of like a rectangle, big, heavy stone steps. And I remember I was serving afternoon teas, so I was like carrying trays, serving people, coming back, and I was writing at the same time, because whatever I was into at that point, I couldn't leave it. I had to do it. I had to do it, not because of a deadline at this point. I had to do it because it was in my mind and I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
I know it sounds a bit naff, doesn't it? But anything that you're sort of sitting there, sort of almost laughing at, it's so bad to laugh at your own jokes. But if you're in that place, and you do,
You've got to enjoy your own jokes.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
And what about if you're away from the farm? Can you write then, or is it easier or harder?
Sometimes it can be easier. Sometimes it can be easier because it does take away an element of the distraction, and particularly if there's a certain focus on writing about a certain thing, it keeps. There's nothing at the side to jump in, because I honestly I get distracted so easily, and the distractions that are coming, it's like I feel like almost writing the books and doing what I've done has this sort of honeypot quality. In other words, you write, you put down on paper, you have this sort of little mine of information. And if you read it back to yourself, or if somebody else reads it, you get other little snippets coming in, other little ideas. Oh, I missed this. Oh, I wish I'd written this. Oh, why didn't I make that little nice segue into this? And other people doing that for you as well, because they read it and they're like, I know something about this. I want to tell her this. I want to share this. So it builds. It builds and builds and builds.
Right. Have you ever been drawn to the idea of writing the alternative life that you maybe could have had if things had worked out differently? Could you ever imagine things?
I can't imagine. That makes me sound like I'm the most unimaginative person ever. I can never understand how fiction works. because I don't really read fiction. I mean, I know you might say Harriet, but I mean, there's all kinds of books on my shelves, all kinds of bits and bats. But I quite often tend to go for sort of vintage copies of things rather than going to Waterstones or W.H. Smiths. You know, there's very little that would get me there. I'd probably end up coming back with some sort of, I don't know, some sort of dictionary or something like that. But
on the little stages in your life where if something had just kind of worked out slightly differently, you could have gone down a very different direction.
I could, but I mean, it's that kind of thing that no matter how fabulous and how absolutely bloody amazing this tale might be, if it didn't happen for me, that's it.
Because you weren't born into it, wasn't like your heritage, was it?
Yeah, I mean, that is so bad, isn't it? That makes me the most unimaginative, dreary. I mean, honestly.
Oh no! I mean, it's good to have your vision and.
I know, but do you know? I'd love to have a vision that could take me over there. I'd love to have a vision that could make me sort of like throw myself into, oh God, some Dan Brown thing or something. I don't know any of the title because I don't read them. But you know, some sort of. Oh, I wouldn't go into anything too macabre or anything like that. But for me, it absolutely. It has to have happened. It has to be real. I'd rather go for mundane and real than sort of like some sort of fantasy that never happened. No, you're not impressed with that?
No. I mean, for a lot of people, that is kind of what they want to focus on, and if that's your
how weird is that? Because this is down to earth and all the rest of it, and you know it is as it is. But people do use that as a getaway and an escape. But is it because it's reachable?
There's something very seductive. You can read it, and you can almost imagine that you could go and buy a farm and start doing it.
Good. Other farmers read it.
Might be a bit dangerous.
It might be a bit, but you know, other farmers do read it. That was the other. Sorry, I look lazy putting my feet up there. But other farmers do read it. It was important to me that it was a book that anyone could read. That literally anyone could read. That it didn't dumb things down, but it didn't sex things up. And that's. I would feel I'd done a great disservice. I'd done a great disservice to people if it was like, you know, the temptation. Here, this is what I've done. You must try it too. It's not a manual. It's not a way to live. In fact, it makes me absolutely cringe to the core when someone says, "Oh, lifestyle book." Isn't that the worst thing that you would ever have on your shelf? Who the hell wants a lifestyle book, for God's sake? Not me. Have you got a lifestyle book?
No.
No, exactly.
I think some of your writing kind of hints that you kind of maybe want to go somewhere.
Yeah, I guess there's quite a lot of snobbery in books as well, isn't there? And you see, I've always kind of joked and laughed about being the least likely person you'd ever find at a literary festival. You know, you know when you get imposter syndrome. I mean, I know it's been rebranded as imposter syndrome. I mean, I suppose most of us would just say feeling proper uncomfortable and like we didn't belong, and that's a fact. But But of course I get that a lot. And I would go places and I would sort of think to myself, well, you know what, do I need to change? Do I need to sort of change the backstory? Do I need to gloss things up a bit? Do I need to say, yeah, I'm totally and utterly inspired by Tolstoy? Do I love Russian literature? And then I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that because that isn't me. It's not me. It's not true. I was inspired by what actually inspired a lot of people. And that was the books by Alf White that went on to make a television series. Popular.
No, I think it's working well. I know. So why change? But it's been really interesting, and thank you very much.
I don't know if I've actually imparted a single piece of useful knowledge.
I think people find their own things in these stories. I think every writer that we talk to has a very different things. People always want the key, but
there isn't one, is there?
No, I think if they kind of have the right table and the right pen, then it's all going to be fine.
If only it was that easy. Yeah. Could you imagine? I mean, no, it's not any of those things. The actual one thing that you need is that spark of, I suppose, the subject matter of what you want to write. If it fires something in you, I'm absolutely the epitome of that idea, that it isn't what you qualify to do on paper. It isn't your, in a way, writing skills. It isn't your grade that you got in English literature or English language, in any of that. It's whether the thing absolutely can consume you and whether you can just be so passionate about it, and whether you can get that across.
Yeah, I think it's an authenticity, and that authenticity really does come through, I think, with your writing. So.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. It's been absolutely great to talk to you.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now, we will listen to Amanda Owen reading from Celebrating the Seasons with the Yorkshire Shepherdess.
Wetlands dominate our moors, covered with cotton grasses, sedges and many varieties of sphagnum moss. The moss creates a living carpet of lurid green, in some places so dense as to form mounded hummocks of spongy mass, giving a clear indication that the ground is waterlogged. This bog-loving moss can soak up to 8 times its own weight in water. In the areas where we have blocked up the drainage grips, this is exactly what we want to see. But in terms of navigating our land, the general rule of thumb is that the brighter green of the moss, the deeper the bog beneath it. So avoid those areas unless you want to experience that sinking feeling. To discern the best route over the moorland, you should heed the old saying, "The sieve is swang, ne'er lost horse nor man." Sieves are a reference to the rushes, the swang being the bog. The roots of the rushes give a foothold, so even though they grow in wet areas, they will take your weight and prevent you sinking entirely. Sphagnum moss has great antiseptic qualities and was used during the First World War to treat wounds. It was also, and this idea I applaud, used by Native Americans who lined their children's cribs and carriers with it as a natural nappy. If only I'd known. For the same reason, it also apparently makes a great deodorant. Mind you, the same is said of wool, but there are definitely some stinky sheep out there. We've always looked for ways to be more self-sufficient, and as winter approaches, the logistical challenges of our geographical location are even more apparent. The road over the county boundary between Cumbria and Yorkshire becomes a no man's land, and the road between us and Kirkby Stephen cuts across the open moorland that is renowned for being dangerously exposed to the elements. Ice and snow are the enemies of a traveller setting out on this route to buy fresh milk, and we were determined that before the onset of winter proper, we would solve the problem by getting a house cow. It felt like a very natural, symbiotic relationship to keep a cow to provide milk for the family on a daily basis. We have a small herd of pedigree beef shorthorns, around 20 cows and a bull. Each year, the cows produce a calf that we either retain to replenish the herd or sell on at around 9 months of age as store cattle to other farmers who will fatten or breed from them. The beef shorthorns, as the name suggests, have been specifically bred to produce beef and are a stockier version of the breed, which originally had been dual purpose, bred for milk and meat production. That is not to say that the beef shorthorn does not produce milk. To be able to feed and nurture a calf, they must lactate, but the cow is not going to milk the same volume as that of the dairy variety. Our cows are, in the main part, docile, apart from Margaret, and there were occasions when we had been able to share the milk produced with a calf. It's a simple enough concept, and one that traditionally was commonplace on many farms. The freshly calved cow would feed her newborn for 3 or 4 days, the calf receiving the vital first milk, colostrum, that provides the energy and antibodies required. Then the calf is moved to a pen away from the cow overnight. The following morning, the cow is milked with just enough milk being taken for use in the household. Then the calf is returned to its mother for the day. The cow's milk is shared between humans and the calf. And if on any one day no milk is required in the household, then the calf gets it all, and there's no need to milk the cow. This worked well for a while, but, of course, as a larger than average household, we consume a decent quantity of milk on a daily basis. So we decided that we would need to buy a cow especially for this job. A dairy shorthorn would fit the bill nicely, and with a breeder nearby in Kirby Stephen, it was easy enough to go and buy a very pretty, delicate cow that was fresh calved and yielding 17 litres of milk a day. People ask if we bought her to save money on milk, but at £1,300, that is a lot of pints of milk before you break even. It has to be said that I didn't care for her name and hoped that Wild Eyes did not reflect her nature. She was of nervous disposition for a while, hardly surprising when you are taken to a new and unfamiliar home, but she soon settled in and was christened with the far gentler name of Buttercup. The children enjoy helping out at milking time. Twice daily they will come along and fill her feed trough with cow ration, giving Buttercup a positive association of food with milking. As a result, she is ready and waiting at the barn door every morning and night. Once she settled into the daily routine, she yielded so much milk that we were struggling to use it all. As we didn't have her calf, which had been kept by her breeder, we bought a couple more, Bob and Stephen, to rear on all the excess milk. Next year, when Buttercup calves, we will be able to adopt the original idea of letting her keep and rear her own calf too. So this will save the milk glut. The raw milk for the house is put through a stainless steel sile with a dairy pad that filters out any bits that might have contaminated the milk. Maybe just a few wisps of hay. But other than that, there is nothing else to do other than bottle it and cool it quickly. With a decent butterfat content, the milk is creamy and excellent in rice puddings and custards. There is something wholly satisfying about scrambled eggs for breakfast. The eggs coming from the chicken, scratching around the outside of the back door, coupled with a splash of milk fresh from the cow that morning. It is an absolute privilege to be able to indulge in such simple pleasures.
It's wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
That was Amanda Owen, the Yorkshire Shepherdess, in conversation with Martin Nathan. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe for free or leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.